Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Just coming up on 10 minutes before 8, we'll come back to our conversation about those troubling inflation figures, the worst for 40 years, and how it impacts your lives. But let's go to other matters, and we've covered in the bulletins here, news bulletins on LBC, the importance of the situation in Northern Ireland. There's one newspaper reporting today, Northern Ireland border checks could be relaxed in an olive branch from Brussels. That's in the Daily Telegraph, the same paper that has quite a lengthy article on the situation. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, who joins me now. Thank you very much for coming on, Foreign Secretary. Good morning to you, Foreign Secretary. You might be surprised that when I've discussed this earlier, a lot of people have trouble working out what the Northern Ireland Protocol actually means in simple terms. And as someone who's been close to it, and I know I read you've been debating it for 6 months with your EU counterpart, in simple sentences, Foreign Secretary, what is the Northern Ireland Protocol? Good morning to you.
The Northern Ireland thank you, Nick. The Northern Ireland Protocol deals with the relationship between the EU, the UK, and Northern Ireland. And the problems we have with the protocol at the moment, first of all, is that east-west trade has been damaged by the existence of customs bureaucracy and checks at the border or the boundary on the Irish Sea. And secondly, that the people of Northern Ireland cannot access the same tax benefits as the people of Great Britain, for example, the VAT tax cut on solar panels, because we have to ask the EU for permission to be able to deliver those tax cuts. There are a few other issues, but those are two critical issues that are fundamentally undermining the communities of Northern Ireland and undermining the tenets of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which says that the North-South relationship and the East-West relationship are both equally important. What has been created is an imbalance because the East-West relationship between Great Britain and Northern Ireland has been undermined.
The solution, you write, would maintain Northern Ireland's place in the UK's internal market, ensure there is no hard border, and protect the EU single market. Just expand a little on that, if you would, Foreign Secretary. What is it that you're proposing, you and your colleagues?
So what I'm proposing is that all of the goods that go across the Irish Sea but are only destined for Northern Ireland should be in a green channel. So they all go as part of a trusted trader scheme. We supply the normal commercial data to the European Union to protect the single market, but they don't have to go through the same customs bureaucracy that goods going into the Republic of Ireland face. So that's things like customs code, customs paperwork, etc., etc. So what I'm proposing is a green lane that is properly protected and enforced. So if somebody starts smuggling those goods into the Republic of Ireland, they will be punished. They will be evicted from the trusted trader scheme. But if they stay within the boundaries of Northern Ireland, then they shouldn't face that customs bureaucracy. That is what I'm proposing. I'm also proposing on tax that there should be exactly the same rules on tax in Northern Ireland that there are in Great Britain.
You write you've had 6 months of negotiations with your European Commission counterpart, Maros Sefcovic, if I'm saying that correctly. How much progress has been made, if any, during those 6 months, would you say, Foreign Secretary?
We have made some progress, but not enough to fix these problems, because currently the European Union aren't agreeing to change the protocol itself. And in order to make the changes that I've just described on tax and customs, we need to change the protocol itself. And as yet, the European Union are not agreeing to do that.
But to those who say, why should they agree? Because we, the United Kingdom, proposed it. Why should they agree to changing it? How would you respond?
There are very real issues in Northern Ireland. We spent years working towards the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which has protected peace and political stability. That is being undermined now by the way this protocol is working. So there have been unintended consequences from this protocol. We need to fix those consequences. I would much rather we got a negotiated solution with the EU. But if the EU are not willing to change their mandate, then it's our responsibility as the government of Northern Ireland to legislate to make sure we protect peace and political stability, because ultimately that is the most important thing.
You write, this is not about scrapping the protocol, but making it work. Does that mean scrapping is off the table, Foreign Secretary?
Our legislation keeps a lot of key parts of the protocol. So, for example, the single electricity market, the North-South relationship. What we're doing is changing the bits that don't work, namely the East-West trade part, namely the tax part. So this is not about scrapping the protocol. We recognise there needs to be an arrangement to manage this very specific situation, but we are making it work better. And it still delivers for the EU. The EU are no worse off as a result of our solution. The single market remains protected. We're supplying this commercial data to the EU. We're enforcing this green lane.
So we would not scrap it under any event, just to clarify, because I did ask, is scrapping off the table? I don't think I quite got a yes or no there, Foreign Secretary.
No, we're not proposing to scrap it.
Okay.
What we are doing is changing the bits that don't work.
Fascinating, your piece. I didn't know how important Northern Ireland was in the response that the United Kingdom have to the war in Ukraine, and I'll ask you to tell my listeners and also update us, on, as Foreign Secretary, on the current situation with hostilities in Ukraine.
Well, Northern Ireland is extremely important, and they produce some of the key weapons that we have been supplying Ukraine, namely the NLAWs and the Starstreak weapons, and they are the type of weapons that the Ukrainians have found extremely useful in fighting Russian tank attacks and dealing with the appalling Russian aggression in Ukraine. I've just been at a meeting of NATO and a meeting of the G7. We're stepping up the sanctions on Russia. We're stepping up the supply of weapons to Ukraine. And I really believe that Ukraine can prevail. They can be successful in the appalling aggression that Russia has shown. And what we need to do in the long term is, yes, support Ukraine to restore its sovereignty and territorial integrity, but we also need to control Russian aggression in future so this can never happen again.
80 plus days the war has lasted so far. What's the intelligence as to how long it will go on? Will it go through the rest of this year, Foreign Secretary?
I don't think anyone can answer that question. What we do know, though, is we have to be prepared for a long haul. This is a long-running situation. Of course, we all hope that it ends sooner rather than later and Russia withdraws its troops from Ukraine. But as yet, we have seen no signs of that. In fact, we've seen no signs that Russia has reduced its overall territorial ambitions. They've changed their tactics, but we haven't seen any signs that Putin has changed his strategy, which is why we need to keep stepping up the pressure, more weapons, more sanctions, until the Ukrainians prevail.
Long haul means this year, then, clearly. You know I'm going to come back on that, Foreign Secretary.
It could do. I don't think anybody is in a position to predict how long this will take. But what I want to be absolutely clear about is that the British government support the Ukrainians for the long haul. We are prepared to do what it takes. We're prepared to carry on with our economic support, with our weapons support, as long as it takes for them to prevail.
Where is the fighting currently most intense, Foreign Secretary?
Well, it's intense in the east and south of the country. What we've seen is Vladimir Putin has changed his tactics. He's changed his tactics from an overall push across the country to specifically focusing on the south and the east. And
the situation regarding Mariupol, in whose hands is that city?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer.
We don't know who actually has occupation at this time?
No.
Can we move to other matters? I know you've been busy this morning, but I'd be surprised if you haven't picked up on, we have the worst inflation figures since 1982, 40 years. You were probably, as I go back, a schoolgirl in Leeds, I think, at that time, going back to that piece that I read about you today. There are people crying out for help, Foreign Secretary. Are we close to having a windfall tax? Some of the headlines seem to suggest we are.
We are facing very, very serious global inflation issues, which have been caused by the COVID crisis, the fallout of that, but also by the war in Ukraine, perpetrated by the Russians. We've seen a price spike in energy. We're seeing food price spikes.
But that's only 82 days, Foreign Secretary. The economic malaise that we suffer, respectfully, is not the product of an 82-day conflict. It goes back further than that, does it not?
Well, the inflation figures we've seen today in the United Kingdom are similar to what we're seeing across Europe, across America. So this is a the inflation issue is a global headwind that we're all facing. And what we need to see is more investment in our economy, more growth in our economy to help deal with those global headwinds. On the subject of the windfall tax, which you asked me about, what I want to see is I want to see those energy companies invest more into new operations.
But how does that help the pensioner who spends all day in the library today because she can't afford to heat their home? I appreciate we're in May now, but situation last month. Surely they could look at what I read could be £2 billion worth of windfall tax being passed on to consumers, Foreign Secretary.
Well, we have set up a £1 billion fund to help support households who are in need. And I recognise it's a very, very difficult situation, including for pensioners, including for other people. So we have set up that fund. But I think one of the reasons that we're facing the very severe issue on energy is we haven't produced enough of our own domestic energy. We haven't historically invested enough in technologies like nuclear. This is my point, that these businesses need to be investing for the future so that we have a resilient energy supply and we're less susceptible to these energy price shocks in the future. So there would be a cost of putting in place a windfall tax rather than seeing that investment in the future of our energy supply.
All right, lastly, you will be aware a Conservative MP has been arrested on suspicion of rape and sexual assault offences, now released on bail, pending further inquiries by London's Metropolitan Police. This is not the first scandal to rock the House of Commons regarding this particular area. What does it say of the culture in your workplace, Foreign Secretary? Have you ever endured anything in this area?
No, I haven't, Nick. And of course, the issue of this case and what we're seeing sounds absolutely appalling. We have to wait for justice to take its course on that case. And I don't know the individual. I don't know exactly the state of those police inquiries. But I think we have to hold individuals to account for the crimes they commit rather than saying it's the fault of the House of Commons. People have a choice about the way they behave. And clearly,
from the outside,
in this case,
I mean, you are a supremely successful politician. You've reached the level of Foreign Secretary. From the outside, the House of Commons looks a pretty hostile area for a woman to work. Is that fair for me to say that?
Well, I certainly think that the culture of the House of Commons has changed and needs to change further. I think there needs to be more to be done to professionalise the way the House of Commons works. I would agree with that. But I don't think we can attribute that. I don't think that's an excuse for people to commit appalling crimes at the same time. I think there's a separate issue of how do we make the House of Commons a more professional working environment. I was one of the people who supported changing the hours early on in my time as a Member of Parliament. I thought the hours were ludicrous. I think that people should be working in daytime primarily rather than nighttime. I think better decisions get made then. And I think there's more that can be done to professionalise the House of Commons. But that does not excuse crimes being committed. That is not an excuse.
I'm grateful for your time this morning. Thank you, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, appearing here on LBC, where it's 3 minutes after 8. It's time for the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, official figures show prices in the UK are now rising at their fastest rate in 40 years. CPI inflation rose to 9% in the year to April, up from 7% in March, largely down to